I want to do a quick review of the poetry that we've covered in this unit so far to help you prepare for the test. I'm still looking through some of your work, and should have that graded soon. But since the test opens tomorrow, I wanted to give you some feedback on these particular poems and make sure that you have a good understanding of what they mean. Now, hate poem, most of you did a pretty good job with answering the questions. So here's some things I'm going to say. You know, I gave you that analysis sheet, and the goal of doing poetry analysis is not to take the life out of it. I realize that sometimes this is just the driest part of poetry study, is having to go through and say, okay, well, who's the speaker? Is there imagery? And asking those kinds of questions. And the goal is not to take the life out of something. The goal is to help understand it better. So that's was my goal in having you especially use the analysis sheets on one of the three love poems, which we're going to go over in a second. But we began with this poem by Julie Sheehan, a hate poem. Now, a couple of things to notice. The speaker here, and never say, I mean, really, if you watch the longer video that I had about poetry analysis, and had put in I think it was the week 12 folder, I made the point that you almost never say that the poet's the speaker. Poets create personas. They create people to talk, characters to speak for them. They explore situations that they may or may not have ever actually encountered. We know, for example, Emily Dickinson, there are a lot of things that she talked about that she actually had not gone through, but because she had such a vivid imagination, she would create these personas, these speakers, and have them explore certain emotions or certain events. So the thing about hate poem, it totally hinges on understanding irony. As a matter of fact, what I recommend that you read for the rest of the semester, and anytime you approach literature, read for irony first and rule it out. Do things truly mean literally what they say, or is there evidence that the interpretation lies with the exact opposite? Okay. And obviously in hate poem, that's exactly the truth. This poem is about a love relationship that the speaker cannot give up. No matter how frustrating the relationship, no matter how difficult, and we know it's a she, and I'll give you that, and show you why in a minute if you didn't catch that. But we know that she is absolutely frustrated by this relationship. So, in walking through this, I hate you truly, truly I do. Everything about me hates everything about you. The flick of my wrist hates you. All right. Now here's the thing. If you really hate somebody, wouldn't you talk about chainsaws? I really want to, shoot out your car windows. I mean, you would talk about something that's a bit more violent, but notice this is our first indication that this is not truly someone. This is someone who is perhaps absolutely enraged at this person at the moment. But this whole idea of the flick of my wrist, the way I hold my pencil hates you, those are humorous. The sound made by my tiniest bones were they trapped in the jaws of a moray eel hates you. I mean, if you don't laugh out loud at some of this, you're kind of missing it, okay? Look out! 4! I hate you. This is a golf expression, right? 4, if you're on the golf course and you hit the ball and you yell 4. That's supposed to be humorous. The little blue-green speck of lint, a sock lint that I'm trying to dig out from under my third toenail left foot hates you. The history of this keychain hates you. My sigh hates you. The goldfish in my order hates you. Yeah, there's a lot of repetition of the word hate. It's almost as though the person's trying to convince themselves, as well as whomever they're speaking to. Now we know this is a woman because of this particular line right here. Okay. And we also know that this is a complex relationship, there was a question, is it true there's a thin line between love and hate? Absolutely. Anything that you love intensely and passionately, you can easily hate just as intensely and passionately if you're betrayed by it. But we have things like, my hesitation when you invite me for a drive, hate. The person still goes, but they hesitate. Right? So here's example of love. My pleasant, good morning, hate. You know how I nuzzle, how when I'm sleepy I nuzzle my head under your arm? hate. All of those are clues that this is actually means the opposite of what this person is saying. Now, here's some evidence of what's really happening in this relationship. Hours after our latest row, and rows are little they're fights, okay? Not necessarily physical fights, but it's two people going at each other. Brandishing the sharp glee of hate, I dissect you cell by cell. So in other words, this couple fights a lot. So if you're going to talk about who the speaker is, we know the speaker is a woman in a love relationship that is tempestuous, where there's a lot of anger, where there's a lot of enmity, where there's a lot of clashing of heads. But truthfully, this person cannot get enough. They can't leave. Breathlessly like two idealists. This whole idea of I can never have enough of you. I can't get away from you. So hence the love part. It's almost like the speaker is frustrated by how much she cares for this person, because even though they fight, she won't leave. And this last image, breathlessly like two, and this is of course a simile, two idealists, so two lungs, right? And a broken submarine. Well, here's the thing about a broken submarine. At some point you can't breathe. Right? It's going down. So it's almost like the speaker acknowledges this relationship is going down, but I can't stop. I can't get away from it. All right. Second poem, Love and Friendship by Emily Bronte. A series of similes. Love is like a wild rose briar. Friendship is like a holly tree. These are similes, right? Using like or as for comparison. Notice that they're both green. The holly is dark when the rose briar blooms, but which will bloom most constantly? So if you're talking about the pattern here, it's a series of questions, okay? The wild rose is sweet in spring. And once again, the symbolism of the season, spring is when things are fresh and new. So if you're talking about the spring of a relationship is when it's just off the ground, right? And everything is, and notice that it's a wild rose briar. So it's something that suddenly sprung up. So you can almost think of this love relationship as being sort of passionate and coming out of nowhere. And so something that's sort of over the top passionate, but can you sustain that when things get hard, right? And that's this whole idea of the symbolism of spring and the symbolism of winter. When things get tough, that's winter, right? And the relationship goes on for a while. Is that rose still attractive? No. If you've ever seen a wild rose briar, the reality is that it looks scrubby and there's no vegetation on it at all in winter. But the whole idea here is that friendship, then, and here's the turn in this poem, then scorn the silly rose wreath now and deck thee with the holly sheen. So the whole idea is holly is consistently green year round. And notice this is personification, December, and this is alliteration. Blights thy brow, that's blight, beating, okay? You even get that hard B sound, and this is alliteration as well, garland green. So you're personifying, or the speaker is personifying December. He still may leave thy garland green. So December, that there will still be some beauty, something pretty, something alive in December when things turn rough, and that's where the holly is. And holly, of course, represents friendship. So there are two ways to interpret this poem. One way is that love relationships based on friendships will last the longest. If you've got a strong, instead of just this wild, passionate, almost chemical relationship with somebody that you can't help yourself, that flares up quickly but then it's gone, versus a steady friendship that turns into love. So that's one interpretation. Second interpretation is to not, and as some students have said, is to not abandon friendships, because that's what lasts, versus love relationships. Okay. Now the speaker in this poem is obviously somebody who is wise, someone who's had some experience in both these areas. So that's what you would say. We don't know if it's male or female. There's no indication of gender. All right, moving on to Neutral Tones by Thomas Hardy. This is a breakup poem. This is, notice in the last stanza here, since then, so this is somebody who has lost a love and is looking back at that day that they actually broke up. All right, so since then, keen lessons that love deceives and rings with wrong have shaped to me your face, the God-cursed sun in a tree, and a pond edged with grayish leaves. This poem Sorry, taking a water break. This poem really focuses on this sort of death of a relationship that one person wasn't sure, one person wasn't aware that the other person was already checked out of it. So notice you've got winter again, the symbolism of winter. So this is the end of something, right? The sun was white. The only time the sun's white, have you ever noticed that, is like if it's really overcast and you look up, and so it's everything here, is neutral. In other words, lack of passion, lack of feeling. So, so neutral in this case, you've got a white sun, you've got ash. So ash is the after effects of fire, right? Fire being passion or emotion. Everything's gray. Your eyes look like your eyes on me were eyes that rove over tedious riddles. Notice the word tedious here. It just means monotonous. There's, once again, no life, no emotion in this. The smile, and this is probably one of the strongest lines in the poem, the smile on your mouth was the deadest thing alive enough to have strength to die. So once again, this person is in a grin of bitterness swept like an ominous bird wing, an ominous, everything in this poem points to just the end of this relationship. Even the person's smile was deceptive, that it too was dying. And so this is what, on that day, this speaker, whether it be male or female, we're not really sure. But what we know is it's a lover who's lost someone and is looking back at the day that he or she found out that this relationship was over. And it was very clear from the setting itself has no life to it. Okay. And the relation, and therefore we move from the setting to the person who is essentially apparently breaking up with this other person. Okay. Finally, Aunt Jennifer's Tigers. Aunt Jennifer is, the key to this is, looking at the lines, the massive weight of Uncle's wedding band. That is a metaphor, of course, for the marriage. When Aunt is dead, her terrified hands, okay, so you've got terrified hands, massive weight of a wedding ring. Her hands are still ringed with the ordeal she was mastered by. So this is a relationship that we know this woman was oppressed in some way, emotionally, whether it be emotionally or physically. And her escape is through this, this needlework that she's doing. Okay, these tigers that she's creating that have all this life to it. Once again, we've got the green symbolizing life. Topaz is that orangey color. These are bright colors, and notice that the tigers become symbols for the life that Aunt Jennifer is not leading, because she is totally oppressed in this marriage. So the whole idea of her finger fluttering through her wool, even as the ivory needle, she is essentially doing needlework, creating this picture of these tigers that are full of they're fearless, and they are courageous, and they are all these things. They're full of life. They are otherworldly, exotic, and they're the opposite of what her life is like. But notice the tigers in the panel that she made will go on prancing, proud and unafraid, in contrast to Aunt Jennifer. And it says she's not dead yet. So what we know is that this is one of Aunt Jennifer's nieces or nephews, because it's Aunt, right? All right. So this is who the speaker is. And the speaker recognizes that Aunt Jennifer is in this relationship that has absolutely sapped the life from her. That's a fearful thing. But what she does, her escape, once again, is through creating this world, this using art, right? The artistry of needlework, through art, escaping this world into a world where, essentially she would not have to be afraid. So the tigers, once again, are the opposite of what she has. Of what the world she's living in. I hope these explanations, I don't think the poems were too difficult, but I wanted to make sure to give you something to aid your study before you took the test. And I hope these explanations are helpful to you.